Mom, I watched your stories. What was that? I was talking to my tomatoes. You were having a full conversation with a plant. You said, "Grow, my darling, grow." I have 200,000 followers, Mom. They can see my geotag. Plants respond to intention. It's scientifically proven. By who? Japanese researcher Masaru Emoto. You love Japanese things. Mom, Emoto worked with water. His studies were never peer-reviewed. It's pseudoscience. Maybe, but my tomatoes are doing just fine. 3 pounds off one plant last week. How's your hydroponic setup doing? Молчание на том конце провода. Эшли набрала воздух. Выдохнула. I'm bringing Katie and Lauren tomorrow. We're shooting content about mindful gardening. Just clean up the beds a little. And please, don't talk to the vegetables on camera. Я убрала грядки, накрыла стол, испекла яблочный пирог, без сахара, специально. На завтра они приехали. Кейти с кольцевой лампой, Лорен с раскладным фоном, Эшли с новым телефоном и видом человека, которому, наконец, дали порулить на чужом заднем дворе. Я вышла поздороваться, поставила пирог на стол. Эшли посмотрела на пирог, на меня, включила запись. Hey guys, today we're talking about the hardest part of clean living. And it's not the food, it's the people around you. Пауза. Take my mom. She's a wonderful woman, but there's a certain type. Grew up in a different era, patterns are set. The brain just doesn't rewire the same way anymore. Potatoes, canned everything, fried food. It's not judgment, it's just age-related rigidity. Кейти смотрела в объектив. Лорен поправляла фон. Я стояла в 3 метрах от дочери, с яблочным пирогом в руках, без сахара, специально. You can't change people like that. You just make sure they don't pull you back down with them. Опустила телефон, повернулась ко мне, улыбнулась. Mom, just leave the pie on the table. We'll have some later. Я посмотрела на Кейти, на Лорен, на дочь и почувствовала, как внутри что-то щелкнуло. Весело так щелкнуло, как предохранитель. Of course, sweetheart. My name is Dorothy Hale, 64 years old, 30 years teaching biology at Jefferson High, which means I know a little more about neuroplasticity than a woman with a ring light and a protein bar sponsorship deal. Before that day, Ashley had been sending me articles about the dangers of potatoes every single week, threw out a jar of my homemade strawberry preserves in the trash can outside my own front door, didn't say a word, just tossed it like garbage, and once told my neighbor Carol, right in front of me, "Yeah, Mom's relationship with food is something we're actively working on." I let it go. 3 times I let it go. Age-related rigidity on camera, in my own backyard, in front of 2 witnesses with a ring light. That one I didn't let go. I went inside, closed the screen door behind me, opened my laptop, started reading about heirloom varieties, medicinal herbs, and the specific legal definitions around industrial hemp versus the other kind. Because when you're planting something new, it pays to know exactly where the lines are. Mom, we're ready for tea. Coming, sweetheart. Just give me 1 minute. I brought out the tea, set it down, sat at the table with Katie and Lauren and my daughter, and smiled for 45 minutes while Ashley filmed 3 more segments about reclaiming your wellness journey from generational patterns. At one point, she held up my pie, the one I'd baked without sugar, specifically, and said it was a step in the right direction, even if the flour situation is still a conversation we need to have. Katie nodded seriously. Lauren got a good angle on the pie. I poured more tea and said nothing. After they left, I stood on the back porch and looked at my garden. Tomatoes, zucchini, green beans climbing the trellis I'd built 17 years ago with my husband Frank, the summer before he got sick. Strawberries in the corner bed that bloomed every June without fail, same as they had since the Carter administration. I looked at all of it for a long time. Then I went inside and started making a list. The thing about teaching biology for 30 years is that you develop a certain patience with observation. You watch, you record, you don't draw conclusions until the data is in. I'd been watching Ashley for 3 months. What I'd taken for enthusiasm, I now understood was a campaign. Systematic, organized. The kind of thing you'd recognize immediately if someone were doing it to a student. Gradual pressure, repeated messaging, reframing of normal behavior as pathology. Week 1, the first article. Why potatoes are silently destroying your gut health. Sent at 7:14 in the morning with a pink heart emoji and the caption, "Just FYI, Mom, love you." I'd read it. It cited 3 studies, 2 of which were funded by a quinoa import company. I knew this because I checked. I'm a biologist. I always check. I didn't say anything. Week 2. She renamed my backyard in her stories. I found out because Carol from next door texted me a screenshot. Why does Ashley's Instagram say your yard is called Mom's Detox Project? I told Carol it was a joke. Week 3, the quinoa. A 5-pound bag left on my kitchen counter without discussion. A Post-it note attached. For when you're ready. I put it in the cabinet behind the canned tomatoes. It was still there. Week 5, the preserves. I'd made 6 jars of strawberry jam that Saturday. Same recipe my mother used, same ball jars I'd been using since 1987. Ashley came by unannounced, saw 1 jar in my purse, I was bringing it to Carol, and took it out. Walked to the trash can at the end of the driveway, dropped it in, didn't say a word, just walked back inside and asked if I wanted to try her new adaptogenic protein shake. I stood on the driveway for a moment. Then I went inside and tried the shake. It tasted like chalk dissolved in sadness. And then last week, Carol's text again, this time with a video clip. Ashley's stories. 30 seconds of my own backyard shot over the fence with the caption, Mom's Garden, a love language and a cry for help at the same time. #wellness, #generational healing. 47,000 views. I watched it twice. Then I closed the app, poured myself a cup of coffee, real coffee, full caffeine, in a mug that said, World's Okayest Teacher, that my students gave me in 2009, and sat down at the kitchen table. The thing was, I wasn't angry. Not exactly. What I felt was something more specific than anger. It was the feeling you get when you've been patient for a long time and you finally collected enough data to know exactly what you're dealing with. Ashley wasn't malicious. Ashley was certain. And certain people, in my experience, need a very particular kind of education. The kind you can't get from a peer-reviewed study. The kind you have to live through. I called Marge on Sunday morning. Marge Kowalski had taught AP chemistry at Jefferson High for 26 years before she retired, and she was the only person I knew who could be genuinely useful in a crisis and genuinely entertaining about it at the same time. We'd been friends since 1994, when we'd both been assigned to cafeteria duty the same semester, and discovered we had identical opinions about standardized testing, cheap coffee, and the general unreliability of men named Gerald. She picked up on the second ring. Dorothy, it's 7:30 on a Sunday. I know. I need to ask you something about fermentation. Dolgая pauza. Like wine? Like everything. Еще пауза. Я слышала, как она садится. Dorothy, what are you planning? Nothing dangerous, probably. I'll bring my camping equipment. See you Friday. I hung up and opened my laptop. I had research to do. 3 days of reading, notebooks filled, index cards organized by category, legal status by state, growth cycles, visual identification, county ordinances for Millbrook Township, the specific language in the Farm Bill that distinguished industrial hemp from its more controversial cousin. I cross-referenced everything twice. I was a biology teacher. I was thorough. By Wednesday evening, I had a complete picture. Everything I was planning was entirely, unambiguously legal. This was important, not because I was worried, I wasn't, but because it would be the first thing Ashley checked, and I wanted her to find nothing. I wanted her to stand in my backyard with her phone in her hand, pulling up county codes and state statutes, and come up completely empty. I also spent considerable time on the medicinal herb question: valerian root, wormwood, rue, mugwort, all of them legal, all of them with Latin names that sounded vaguely threatening if you weren't familiar with them, all of them with long histories in traditional medicine that I could discuss in extensive, accurate detail at any moment, which I fully intended to do. I ordered the seeds Thursday morning, express shipping. On Thursday afternoon, my neighbor Bob Chen appeared at the fence line while I was rearranging the garden beds. Bob was 61, recently retired from the post office, and spent most of his time on a riding lawnmower with the focused intensity of a man who had finally found his purpose. He was not nosy, exactly. He was observant. There was a difference, and Bob understood it. He watched me move the tomato cages for a moment. Doing some reorganizing? Complete redesign. New direction for the garden. Uh-huh. He looked at the empty bed where the potatoes had been. Ashley's idea? Mine, actually. Bob nodded slowly. He had the expression of a man who had been married for 34 years and had learned to recognize the specific tone women used when they said, "Mine, actually." Okay, then. He went back to his lawnmower, but I noticed he didn't turn it on right away. Marge arrived Friday at noon with a camping stove, 3 liters of apple cider vinegar, a bag of cheesecloth, and an expression of pure professional interest. She stood at the back door and looked at my notes spread across the kitchen table. Dorothy, this is a research project. It's a garden redesign. Industrial hemp, wormwood, ancestral healing practices. But Nilagolovo. There's an altar on this list. An energy center for grounding. Marge put down her bag, picked up the county ordinances printout, read it carefully, put it down. Everything here is legal. Every single thing. The fermentation is for the herbal tinctures, and possibly some hard cider for the participants. What participants? I showed her the flyer I'd been working on. Backyard Wellness Collective, founding meeting. Learn to nourish your body with ancestral wisdom and solar intention. Free. Bring something from your garden. I'd put Carol's email as the contact, which Carol had agreed to after I explained the situation over coffee on Thursday. Carol had laughed for approximately 4 minutes and then said she was in for whatever this was. Marge read the flyer twice. How many people do you think will actually come? At least 7. I already checked. You already checked? I asked around. Marge looked at the flyer again, then at my notes, then out the window at the empty garden beds. You know this is going to end with police involvement. Deputy Henderson is very reasonable. You already know which deputy it'll be? I know all the deputies. I taught their kids. Marge stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her camping stove. Okay, show me the beds. We worked all weekend. The potatoes were already out. I'd done that honestly, as promised. Ashley had asked me to remove them, and I had. What she hadn't specified was what would replace them. The industrial hemp went in the east bed, where it would get full morning sun. It was a fiber variety, the kind used for rope and fabric, legal in 47 states and in Millbrook County specifically since 2019. I had the documentation laminated. I put up a sign. Fiber crop. Do not disturb. USDA compliant. The sign was very official looking. Marge had designed it. The medicinal herbs went in the center bed. Valerian, for sleep support, as I'd explained to anyone who asked. Wormwood, traditional digestive aid used in European folk medicine for centuries. Rue, historically significant, mentioned in Shakespeare, entirely legal, smells terrible when the leaves are crushed. I printed Latin names on small wooden stakes. Artemisia absinthium, Ruta graveolens, Valeriana officinalis. They looked extremely serious. Between the two beds, I built what my notes described as an energy center. This consisted of a ring of stones from the creek bed at the back of the property, a collection of garden tools arranged with what I felt was a certain artistic intentionality, and a large mason jar filled with dried herbs, sealed with beeswax, with a label that read in careful block letters, "Quinoa is fear." Marge stood back and looked at it. The jar. It's a statement piece. Of what exactly? Artistic expression, protected under the First Amendment. Dorothy, Marge. She looked at the jar for another moment, then she got out her phone and took a picture of it. For posterity. Around the perimeter of the whole garden, I put small wooden stakes with laminated quotes. Masaru Emoto. Water is the mirror that has the ability to show us what we cannot see. I'd printed 12 of them. They fluttered slightly in the Saturday afternoon breeze. By Sunday evening, the garden was complete. I stood on the back porch with a glass of iced tea and looked at it. Marge stood beside me. Dorothy, this is either the most sophisticated act of passive aggression I have ever witnessed, or you've actually started a religion. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No, I suppose they're not. From over the fence, very quietly, came the sound of Bob Chen's phone camera clicking. We both heard it. Neither of us turned around. Good evening, Bob. Dovning, Dorothy. Zvuk shagov, chlopnula dvir. Marge sipped her tea. He's going to be a problem. Or a feature. I went inside to print the flyers for the Wellness Collective founding meeting. The garden looked beautiful in the evening light. The Emoto quotes caught the last of the sun. The tomatoes, I noticed, were doing extraordinarily well. Ashley came on Saturday. She didn't call first. She never called first when she thought she was coming to check on something. She'd learned that from somewhere, probably a podcast about loving confrontation, which was a phrase I found deeply revealing about the person who'd invented it. I heard her car in the driveway at 10:15. I was on the back porch with my coffee. I didn't go inside. The gate opened. Ashley came around the side of the house. She was wearing workout clothes and carrying a reusable water bottle that probably cost $40. And she had the bright, purposeful expression of someone who had rehearsed what they were going to say on the drive over. She saw the garden. She stopped. A long moment passed. Mom, what is that? My wellness garden. That's hemp. Industrial, fiber crop, perfectly legal. I have the documentation laminated if you'd like to review it. Ashley walked closer. She looked at the USDA compliance sign, at the Latin names on the stakes, at the Emoto quotes fluttering on their little wooden posts, at the mason jar in the center of the energy center with "Quinoa is fear" written on it in careful block letters. She looked at it for quite a while. What does that mean? It's a meditation on fear-based dietary marketing. The way certain wellness influencers, and I'm speaking generally, not about anyone specific, use anxiety as an engagement tool. The jar represents the emptiness at the center of restrictive nutritional ideology. Ashley turned and looked at me. Mom, you literally wrote "Quinoa is fear" on a jar and put it in the middle of your yard. Energy center. And yes, it's a statement piece. First Amendment. I can't film this. Why not? It's a wellness garden. This is your whole brand, Ashley. Ancestral wisdom, mindful gardening, connection to the earth. I'm connecting to the earth. You're growing hemp. Fiber crop. It looks exactly like... I know what it looks like. That's why I have the laminated documentation. Ashley opened her mouth, closed it, opened her phone, started typing something, stopped, put her phone in her pocket, took it out again. I sipped my coffee and waited. I had nowhere to be. She was still staring at the "Quinoa is fear" jar when the police cruiser pulled up. Deputy Marcus Henderson was 43 years old, had been with the Millbrook Township Police Department for 18 years, and had gone through my sophomore biology class in 1998, where he had received a B+ and written an exceptional paper on the cardiovascular system of bony fish. He was a good deputy and a sensible man, and I had a great deal of respect for him, and I could tell from his expression as he came through the gate that the feeling was mutual and that he was very tired already. Behind him was Officer Danny Martinez, who was 26 and new, and whose face was doing something complicated that I recognized as the specific look of someone trying to decide whether what they were seeing was funny or alarming, and landing on both simultaneously. Henderson looked at the garden, at the USDA sign, at the Emoto quotes, at the jar. He took a slow breath. Mrs. Hale, Marcus, how's your mother? She's good, thank you. We got a call. From whom? Henderson glanced very briefly toward the fence line. I didn't turn around, but I noted it. A concerned neighbor. Of course. Henderson walked over to the hemp bed, looked at it carefully, looked at the documentation I'd helpfully mounted on a small easel beside the USDA compliance sign, county ordinance number, state farm bill citation, THC content certification from the seed supplier. He read it all the way through. Martinez was looking at the "Quinoa is fear" jar with an expression I could only describe as professionally neutral, which was doing a great deal of work. The documentation checks out. I made extra copies if you'd like one for your files. That's not necessary. Посмотрел emoto quotes. The signs, inspirational garden markers. Available on Etsy, actually, though I made mine myself. Henderson turned quietly to Martinez. You want to field this one? Martinez looked at the jar again. The mason jar in the middle there. Artistic expression, First Amendment. I can provide case law if that would be helpful. No, that's okay. Henderson looked at Ashley, who had been standing very still since the deputies arrived, holding her $40 water bottle with both hands. Ma'am, is there a specific concern you'd like to report? Ashley looked at the hemp, at the jar, at me. My mother she's growing. It looks like it's a licensed fiber crop, ma'am. All the documentation is in order. She put a jar that says "Quinoa is fear" in her backyard. That's not a crime. Ashley looked at me. I smiled at her over my coffee cup. It was my warmest smile. I'd been practicing it. Henderson turned back to me. He had the expression of a man who was going to go home tonight and tell his wife something that she was not going to believe. Mrs. Hale, everything appears to be in order. Just try to keep it reasonable. Marcus, I am the most reasonable person you know. He looked at me for a long moment. Yeah. Повернулся к выходу. Have a good day. Martinez followed him. At the gate, he glanced back once at the quinoa is fear jar. I would think about his expression for the rest of the weekend with considerable satisfaction. Ashley stayed for another 20 minutes. We had the kind of conversation that isn't really a conversation, where one person keeps trying to find the angle that makes the other person admit something is wrong, and the other person just keeps offering tea. Mom, your followers, your neighbors' followers, people are going to think what? That you've lost your mind. Have I done anything illegal? No. Have I done anything that contradicts established wellness principles? Connection to ancestral plant wisdom? Mindful relationship with the earth? Solar energy cultivation? You're not cultivating solar energy. You're growing hemp in your backyard. Fiber crop. Ashley pressed her fingers to her temples. Why are you doing this? I looked at her. I thought about the strawberry preserves in the trash can. About 47,000 people watching 30 seconds of my garden with the caption, "Cry for help." About sitting across a table from her 2 weeks ago while she told a camera that my brain didn't rewire the same way anymore. I'm exploring new directions in the garden. You encouraged me to be more mindful about what I grow. That's not what Mom, that's not... More tea? She left at 11:30. I watched her car back out of the driveway. Then I went inside and called Carol, who had been watching from her kitchen window and had documented the entire deputy visit on her phone. Dorothy, Martinez took a picture of the jar when Henderson wasn't looking. Did he? He absolutely did. Your neighbor Bob was filming over the fence the whole time, by the way. He had a whole setup, tripod and everything. I looked out my kitchen window toward Bob's yard. I couldn't see the tripod, but I believed it. Carol, what do you know about Bob's internet presence? Why? I'm just thinking about reach. The Backyard Wellness Collective had its founding meeting the following Saturday. 7 people came, which was exactly what I'd predicted. Carol, obviously. Marge, who arrived with a batch of her fermented ginger tonic and a lawn chair. Ruth and Diane from down the street, who were 71 and 68 respectively, and have been looking for a reason to spend Saturday mornings somewhere other than their living rooms. Tom Garrett from the house on the corner, who grew tomatoes competitively and had opinions about soil amendment that I respected. Patricia Okafor, who'd retired from nursing 2 years ago and had recently taken up what she called aggressive gardening as a coping mechanism. And Leonard Fitch, who was 83, had lived on this street since 1971 and came because Carol told him there would be food and he would not be required to talk about his cholesterol. I set up chairs in the backyard, made lemonade, fresh, with actual sugar, because some principles are non-negotiable, put out a spread of things from my garden, tomatoes, cucumber salad, the last of the strawberries. Everyone arrived and sat down and looked at the garden. Leonard looked at the quinoa is fear jar for a long moment. What's that say? Quinoa is fear. What's quinoa? It's a grain From South America. Is it good? No. Okay. I explained the collective. We were a community of people interested in traditional gardening practices, ancestral plant wisdom, and the relationship between intentional cultivation and personal wellness. Meetings were weekly. Bring something from your garden. No agenda, no fees, no quinoa. This last point got a laugh from everyone except Patricia, who said she'd actually been curious about quinoa, and from Marge, who had the expression of someone watching a very long chess game approach its endgame. We spent 2 hours in the backyard. Tom and I had a genuinely excellent conversation about heirloom tomato varieties. Ruth brought up a documentary she'd watched about permaculture. Leonard fell asleep in his lawn chair for 40 minutes and woke up looking significantly better than he had when he arrived. It was, by any measure, a very pleasant Saturday morning. The following Tuesday, Ashley called. Mom, I saw Carol's Instagram. Carol has lovely photos. She posted pictures of your gathering, with the hemp in the background and the jar. The Wellness Collective. Yes, that was our founding meeting. You started a club. A collective. There's a philosophical distinction. Mom, my sponsor, the protein bar people, they saw Carol's post. They sent me an email. They want to know if my mother is running an alternative wellness organization and whether that creates brand alignment concerns. I let that sit for a moment. What did you tell them? I told them it was a gardening club. That's exactly what it is. Dorothy, it has a name. It has weekly meetings. There is a mason jar in the center of it that says quinoa is fear. I'm thinking of adding a newsletter. The silence on the other end of the line was a particular kind of silence, the kind that has texture. I'll come by Sunday. I'll make pie. She came Sunday with Kyle. I want to be fair about Kyle. He was 28 years old, had a master's degree in nutritional science from a school in Colorado, and believed genuinely and completely in everything he said. In a different context, I might have found him interesting. He had good posture and remembered to make eye contact, and he cared, sincerely, about people's metabolic health. These are not nothing. But he walked into my backyard carrying a folder of printed materials and said, Mrs. Hale, I understand you're exploring some alternative approaches to wellness, and I just want to make sure we're grounding those explorations in evidence-based nutritional science. And I will admit that something in me sat up and paid attention in a way that was not entirely kind. Kyle, come in, sit down, tell me everything. He told me everything. Glycemic index, bioavailability, systemic inflammation, mitochondrial function. He was thorough and organized, and he used the phrase bioavailable 14 times, which I counted because I am a biologist and I count things. I listened to all of it, took notes actually. I had a small notebook, which seemed to unsettle him slightly, though he was too professional to show it. When he finished, I looked at my notes. Kyle, you cited the Framingham Heart Study to support your point about saturated fat and cardiovascular risk. Are you aware that the Framingham data has been substantially reanalyzed since the original 1960s publications, and that the relationship between dietary fat and cardiac outcomes is considerably more complex than your summary suggests? Kyle blinked. There's ongoing research, and the meta-analysis you referenced for the glycemic index claims, that's from 2014. There have been 4 significant contradicting studies since then, 2 of which were published in journals with higher impact factors than your source. I can pull the citations if you'd like. Kyle looked at his folder, then at Ashley, then back at me. You read nutritional science literature. I taught biology for 30 years. I read everything. The potatoes specifically. Excellent source of potassium, vitamin C, and resistant starch, which functions as a prebiotic and has positive effects on gut microbiome diversity. The glycemic impact depends almost entirely on preparation method and what you eat them with. I have 3 papers on this if you're interested. Kyle closed his folder. Ashley was looking at the garden. She had the expression of someone who was recalculating something very fundamental. Did you know she was a biology teacher? You didn't mention that. I thought she just, I didn't think she didn't finish the sentence. I let her not finish it. I brought out lemonade, real lemonade, with sugar. Kyle drank his without commenting on the sugar. I respected that. We sat in the garden for a while. Tom was visible over the fence, doing something with a trellis. Leonard walked by on the sidewalk, saw us, waved at me, ignored Kyle entirely, which was perfect. After a while, Kyle said he needed to get going. He shook my hand, which was more genuine than I'd expected, and told me he'd look at the papers I mentioned. I believed him. After he left, Ashley stayed. We sat with the lemonade and didn't say anything for a few minutes. You could have just told me you knew this stuff. You weren't asking, sweetheart. You were telling. The jar still says, quinoa is fear. It does. Are you going to take it down? I'm thinking about it. The Idol appeared the following weekend. I want to be precise about what it actually was. A large, carved wooden figure, roughly 4 feet tall, abstract in form, which I had found at an estate sale in Harwick for $35. The previous owner had apparently purchased it at an art fair in the 90s. It had a vaguely ceremonial quality to it, the kind of thing that looked, depending on your frame of mind, like either contemporary art or something that should have fire burning in front of it. I placed it at the center of the energy altar. I wound a string of solar garden lights around it, the warm, white kind, very tasteful. I made a small sign on cardstock. Barbara, patron saint of heirloom tomatoes. Marge came by Friday evening and stood in front of it for a long time without speaking. You named it. Everyone deserves a name. Dorothy. She has a face. Does she? I thought it was abstract. That is a face. I think it's more of an impression of a face, interpretive. Marge looked at Barbara. Barbara looked back with the serene authority of someone who had been patron saint of heirloom tomatoes for approximately 72 hours and had already committed to the role entirely. The solar lights are a nice touch. Thank you. She needed lighting. The Wellness Collective met Saturday morning as usual. Ruth brought zucchini bread. Patricia brought a cutting from her rosemary bush. Tom brought a blight-resistant Cherokee purple seedling that caused a brief but intense bidding situation we resolved through a drawing. Leonard looked at Barbara for a long moment when he arrived. New addition? Barbara, she watches over the tomatoes. Does it work? 3 pounds per plant last week. Leonard nodded slowly, with the expression of a man who had lived long enough to find this entirely reasonable. I'm going to bring a tomato plant next week. By Sunday afternoon, Carol had posted 3 photos of Barbara to her Instagram with the caption, "The Sacred Garden Grows," and tagged the Backyard Wellness Collective account, which Carol had created without telling me and which had, by Sunday evening, 412 followers. Ashley called at 9:15 Sunday night. Mom, there is an idol in your backyard. A wellness totem. She has a name. It has a name? Barbara. Why Barbara? She looked like a Barbara. My sponsor's assistant called me today. She sent me a screenshot of Carol's Instagram. She asked if this was connected to my brand. I said no. She sent me 3 more screenshots. Mom, Barbara is in all of them, and she looks like she's a patron saint. Very traditional concept, Catholic in origin. I can send you the historical context. Are you running a cult? Define cult. Mom! Ashley, I'm growing a garden. I have weekly meetings with my neighbors. We share produce and discuss traditional horticulture. Barbara is a decorative garden sculpture with a name because I felt she needed one. None of this is remotely actionable. Silence. The hemp is still there. Growing beautifully. Excellent fiber content. I'm coming over Tuesday. I'll make pie. She hung up. I sat with my phone for a moment. From the backyard, through the screen door, Barbara's solar lights glowed warmly in the dark. Good night, Barbara. Deputy Henderson came back the following Thursday. This time, he came alone, without Martinez. He knocked at the front door at 2 p.m. and stood on the porch with his hat in his hands and the expression of a man who had looked up the relevant ordinances very carefully before coming. Mrs. Hale, we've received another report. Marcus, come in. I have iced tea. He came in. He had iced tea. He looked at Barbara through the kitchen window with careful neutrality. The figure in the garden. Barbara. She's a decorative garden sculpture. $35 at the Harwick estate sale. I have the receipt. You have the receipt. I keep receipts for everything. Habit from teaching. Documentation is important. Henderson looked at the receipt I produced from the kitchen drawer, looked at Barbara through the window, looked back at the receipt. Mrs. Hale, are you operating a religious organization? Would that require a permit? Yes. A 501c3 filing and a zoning variance at minimum. Then no, we're a gardening collective, social, educational, community-oriented. Tom Garrett brought a Cherokee purple seedling last week. Ruth made zucchini bread. Henderson sat back. He had the expression of someone who understood they were not going to win this argument and was deciding whether to keep trying. The gatherings, the signs, the Barbara, it's generating calls, Mrs. Hale. I understand. Bob Chen? I can't discuss the source of reports. Of course not. Is there any chance you'd consider toning things down a little? I looked out the window at the garden, at the hemp, at the wormwood and valerian with their Latin stakes, at the Emoto quotes, at Barbara glowing among the tomatoes. Define toning down. Henderson looked at me, then at Barbara, then back at me. Never mind. He finished his iced tea, put his hat back on. Mrs. Hale, for what it's worth, your documentation has been impeccable, every single time. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that. Martinez asked me to ask if you're selling any of the tomatoes this year. I looked at him. Tell Danny I'll set aside a flat for him, Cherokee purples. Henderson nodded once, left. I went back to the kitchen and made a note to set aside a flat for Officer Martinez. Documentation, as I said, is important. Ashley came Tuesday as promised, but she didn't come alone. She brought her phone, her ring light, collapsed but present, a statement in itself, and a printed document that she set on my kitchen table with the careful deliberateness of someone who had been coached on how to have a difficult conversation. Kyle was not with her this time. Ashley sat across from me with her document and her water bottle and an expression that was trying very hard to be concerned and firm simultaneously. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the Wellness Collective." "Of course." "My sponsors are asking questions. My followers are finding the collective account. Carol has been tagging me in posts, and people are connecting it to my brand, and the optics are..." "Ashley." "What?" "Put the document down." A pause. She didn't put it down. "I know you're worried about your brand. I understand that these concerns are real. But I want to tell you something, and I want you to actually hear it, not process it for brand impact." Ashley looked at me. She put the document down. I told her about the preserves in the trash can. I'd never mentioned it directly. I'd let it go the day it happened, and the next day, and every day after that. I told her about it now. Not with anger, just clearly, the way you'd describe an experiment. This happened. This is what it felt like. I told her about sitting at my own kitchen table while she explained my brain's limitations to a camera. I told her about Carol's text with the "cry for help" caption, and reading it in this kitchen, in this chair, with 30 years of lesson plans on the shelf behind me and Frank's trellis visible through the window. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. That's the thing about 30 years of teaching teenagers. You learn that volume is the least effective tool you have. When I finished, there was a long silence. Ashley was looking at the table. "I didn't think about how the preserves thing looked." "I know you didn't." "The video, the cry for help one, I thought I was being relatable. I didn't think..." "You didn't think I'd see it." She didn't answer. That was its own answer. "Mom, the hemp, Barbara, the jar that says, 'All legal, all documented.'" "But why?" "Because you told 200,000 people that my brain didn't work right, in my own backyard, while I was standing 3 feet away holding a pie I'd made for you." The silence after that was different from the silences before it. It had weight. Ashley picked up her water bottle, put it down, picked it up again. "I'm sorry, Mom." I looked at her. She meant it. I could tell she meant it. I'd been reading people's sincerity for decades, and Ashley meant it. "I know you are. Are you going to take down Barbara?" I thought about it. I looked out the window at Barbara among the tomatoes, solar lights catching the afternoon sun, serene and entirely committed to her role. "No." "Mom." "She's good for the garden. Tom Garrett agrees with me, and Tom Garrett has been growing tomatoes since 1987. Ashley made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sigh and existed in the specific emotional space between them. The jar, at least. I looked at the "Quinoa is Fear" jar through the window. "I'll think about the jar." We had tea, real tea, and I put actual sugar in both cups without asking, and Ashley didn't say anything about it, which was the most meaningful thing that happened that afternoon. The video went up on a Thursday. I didn't know about it until Friday morning when Carol called at 7:45 and said, without hello, without preamble, "Dorothy, go look at Bob Chen's YouTube channel, right now." I found it on my laptop. Bob Chen, it turned out, had a YouTube channel called Backyard Mysteries, My Neighbor Dorothy, which he had created approximately 3 weeks ago and which had, as of Friday morning, 112,000 subscribers. The video was called Day 22. She named the idol. It was 14 minutes long. It had, in the 12 hours since posting, accumulated 340,000 views. Bob had filmed everything. The garden redesign, the first wellness collective meeting, shot from his upstairs window with a telephoto lens he had apparently purchased specifically for this purpose. Deputy Henderson's second visit, with audio, because Bob had set up a small directional microphone in the rose bushes along the fence line, which I found both impressive and deeply characteristic. He had filmed Leonard falling asleep in his lawn chair and waking up looking better. He had filmed Tom Garrett's reaction to the Cherokee Purple seedling drawing. He had filmed Marge drinking her fermented ginger tonic with the focused satisfaction of someone who had earned it. And he had filmed the night I introduced Barbara, through the kitchen window, from his backyard, in the dark. Me standing in the garden with a string of solar lights, talking to a carved wooden figure, saying goodnight. His commentary throughout was completely deadpan. Day 14, she's added documentation to the hemp bed. The documentation is laminated. I've been a mailman for 30 years, and I have never seen anyone laminate county ordinances before. I respect it. Day 19, 7 neighbors came for what she's calling a wellness collective meeting. I counted. Leonard Fitch from number 44 fell asleep. I don't think this is a comment on the event. Leonard falls asleep everywhere. He fell asleep at the Millbrook 4th of July parade in 2019. I have footage. His wife Linda appeared in several segments, filmed from the kitchen, watching the garden through the window. Bob, that's a statue. Bob, she's talking to the statue. Bob, the police came again. Bob, I think I want to go to the gardening meeting. This last one was from day 17. Bob had filmed his own reaction, which was the expression of a man encountering something he hadn't anticipated. Linda Chen came to the Wellness Collective the following Saturday. She brought persimmons from the tree in her backyard and a genuine question about soil pH that Tom Garrett answered with the enthusiasm of a man who had been waiting his entire retirement for someone to ask him about soil pH. The video's comment section was, by Friday afternoon, a significant cultural event. The top comment, with 47,000 likes, read, "The laminated county ordinances. This woman did not come to play. She came to win." The second, "Barbara, the patron saint of heirloom tomatoes, is the most powerful entity in this neighborhood, and I will not be taking questions." Someone had made a fan account for Barbara. It had 8,000 followers by Saturday morning. Ashley called at noon on Friday. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "Go ahead." "My manager called this morning, the protein bar people. They want to know if they can sponsor a collab with the Backyard Wellness Collective. They said, and I'm quoting, "The authentic community energy and the grassroots aesthetic align perfectly with where the wellness space is going." I looked out the window at Barbara. "What did you tell them?" "I said I'd ask you." "Mom, you have more reach than me right now. Bob's video, your garden has more followers than my account. My manager said," "Ashley?" "What?" "I don't want a brand partnership. Barbara is not a sponsored post." "Okay. But I will tell you what I do want." "What?" "I want you to come to the collective meeting on Saturday. Not to film it, not to content plan it, to come and sit in the garden and eat Ruth's zucchini bread and let Leonard fall asleep and talk to Tom about Cherokee purples. Just that." A long pause. "Okay." And bring something from your kitchen. Doesn't matter what. Carol brings persimmons. Marge brings the ginger tonic. Leonard brings himself, and that's considered sufficient. Ashley made the sound again, the one that lived between a laugh and something else. Can I bring quinoa? I looked at the quinoa is fear jar through the window, thought about it genuinely. You can bring quinoa, but it goes on the snack table, not the altar. The altar? Energy center. Right, yeah. Okay, Mom. She came Saturday. She brought quinoa, prepared, actually cooked in a salad with cucumber and lemon that was, I will admit, not bad. She sat in a lawn chair between Carol and Linda Chen and didn't film anything for 2 hours. Leonard woke up from his nap, looked at the quinoa salad, took a portion, ate it, and said it was fine. This was the most enthusiasm Leonard had ever publicly expressed about food, and Ashley looked genuinely moved by it, which I found unexpectedly touching. Tom Garrett explained the Cherokee Purple situation to Ashley in considerable detail. Ashley listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, which I suspect she did not expect from herself. At one point, she got up and walked over to Barbara, stood in front of her for a moment. You're bigger in person. She stood there a little longer. Then she came back and sat down. Didn't say anything about it. Neither did I. Bob's channel hit 200,000 subscribers by the end of the month. He posted every Tuesday and Thursday. The title stayed deadpan. Day 31. Deputy Henderson comes back. He brought a plant. Day 38. Leonard Fitch reviews the quinoa salad. Final verdict? Fine. Day 44. The tomatoes are ready, and Mrs. Hale is not calm about it. Linda Chen became the unofficial co-host, appearing in comment responses Bob posted with the regularity of someone who had decided this was her job now. Martinez did come for his Cherokee Purples. He came back the following Saturday, out of uniform, and sat at the back of the Wellness Collective meeting and ate zucchini bread and didn't say anything official, which I appreciated. Ashley posted one video about the garden, just the garden, no selling points, no brand positioning, no talk about generational patterns or brain rigidity, just the tomatoes and Barbara and me talking to a plant in the way that I do. She said in the caption that she'd been thinking about the difference between helping someone and deciding they needed help, and that she was still figuring that out. It got more engagement than anything she'd posted in 6 months. She didn't mention the glycemic index once. The jar stayed. Quinoa is fear in careful block letters, sealed with beeswax in the center of the energy altar between the wormwood and the valerian and Barbara's solar lights. Marge asked me once, at the end of a collective meeting, when I was going to take it down. I looked at it for a moment. When I feel like it. Which will be when? When whoever's listening decides. Marge looked at me. Did you just break the fourth wall? Marge, go home. She went home. I stayed in the garden for a while longer. The tomatoes were extraordinary that year. 3 pounds per plant, minimum. The hemp grew to regulation height and produced excellent fiber. The wormwood smelled terrible and kept the aphids off everything within a 6-foot radius, which is a thing I knew from 30 years of biology, and which I did not mention to anyone until it became relevant. Barbara presided over all of it with the serenity of someone who has found her purpose. Good morning. You doing okay? The tomato plant, as tomato plants do, did not respond. But it had 4 new blossoms overnight. I'm a biologist. I note things like that.